Welcome back to our next session in Basics in Biblical Hebrew. We're going to be starting in chapter 15 of our textbook and workbook. Um, we've gone through the last 13 and 14 chapters. We went through the cow perfect strong verbs and weak verbs. And today we're going to go into the cow imperfect strong verbs. And so the imperfect is the second major Hebrew verbal conjugation to be studied. In over 50,000 occurrences of the cow stem in the Hebrew Bible, the imperfect conjugation occurs 21,951 times, approximately about 43% of all cow stem occurrences. Like the perfect conjugation, the imperfect inflects or it changes its form in order to indicate person, gender, and number. And what we're going to have to do is learn a new set of subformative endings. So once you've got the perfect mastered, the perfect conjugation, and the imperfect conjugation mastered pretty well, then you're going to pretty much have it all the way throughout. Those are the same subformative endings that you'll find throughout both the strong verbs, the cow stem, and the derived stem verbs. So once we get past this section of the imperfect, then you'll have taken off quite a bit and got quite a bit up under your belt right there. Now, the meaning of the cow imperfect, the imperfect conjugation is used to express incomplete action, like we mentioned in chapter 12. And it's usually translated by the English present tense, I study or I will study. Now, the action verb occurs either at the time of speaking or after the time of speaking. The Hebrew verb imperfect is also used to denote habitual or customary action, whether in the past, present, or future. For example, he prays regularly, or he used to pray. This is a habitual or customary usage of the imperfect. You don't find this mainly in the perfect. You find it in the imperfect use. Now, imperfect may also be written by one of the several modal values, like I would, or could, or should, may, or might. These are conditions. These are wishes, and we'll go into that in a little bit later on when we get into that area here. These modal translation values are suggested by context and various issues of syntax. So it must also be emphasized that, like the perfect, the Hebrew imperfect does not have a time of action or tense apart from the context and issues of the syntax. So to primarily signifies a type of action is what it does. The imperfect aspect denotes or designates a verbal action for which the mind of the speaker or the writer, the conclusion is not in view. It means the action has not been completed. To state it differently, the imperfect aspect denotes incomplete action, whether in the past, present, or future. Now let's go ahead and get into the form of the cow imperfect. Now we recall that the perfect conjugation is called the suffix conjugation because it has subformatives or suffixes on the end of it, attached to the verbal root in order to indicate the person, gender, and number. The imperfect conjugation is called the prefix conjugation because inflectional prefixes called performatives are added to all the imperfect verbal forms. That means they're added to the front of the verbal root. These performatives distinguish the imperfect conjugation from all other conjugations. It should also be noted, however, that half of the imperfect verbal forms also take their own imperfect subformatives. So not only do you have to see these subformatives on the end of the verb root, but you are going to have preformatives also. So let's look at that paradigm here that gives you both the preformatives and the subformatives here in the cow. Remember, this is the cow stem, and this is what we call cow stem imperfect conjugation here. You remember, you had 7 stems and 8 conjugations, and so right now we're only going into the second conjugation here. Highlighted in red, you'll see the performatives here, the yod and the herrick. That is a diagnostic indicator to tell you that this is imperfect. showing incomplete action here. And normally on the strong verbs, the stem vowel will be a holum here, separating the second and third consonant. We have yik-tol for he will kill, tik-tol for she will kill, tik-tol for you singular will kill, masculine singular will kill, and tik-tali, which is you feminine singular will kill. And then we have ek-tol, which is I will kill. So the yod and the heroic shows the third masculine singular. The tav and the heroic shows both the third feminine singular and the second masculine singular. So those are identical. Context will tell you which one it will be as you use it in the sentence structure here. And the tick, basically the preformative of the tav and the heroic, with the combination of the heroic yod, tells you that it is second feminine singular. Tik-tali, the highlighted in red here. This is the preformative, and this is the subformative here. Just like we learned the subformatives in the perfect, this is the subformative ending for second feminine singular in the imperfect. Now, we'll look at the preformatives. For first common singular, it's the aleph with the segol. Aleph with segol in the imperfect tells you that that is the first common singular imperfect. So when we go to, we're going from third person down to first person. So in the plurals, we go into third masculine plural. We have the yod and the heroic for the preformative, and the shuric, just like we did in the perfect, for the third masculine plural. They will kill. So that's nice to know that the subformative in the imperfect is the same for the subformative, although it's not common. The perfect has the common. In the imperfect, it breaks it down into the persons. So both masculine and feminine, except for when we get down to the first commons. The first common singular and the first common plural are both commons. All the others are broken down by person and gender here. So we have the shuric. We have the yod with the heroic for the prefix, the shuric for the suffix to show that it is third masculine plural. They will kill. Tiktolna. Here we have third feminine plural, and basically you have the tav and the heroic for the preformative, and the noon, the comments, and the hey. I call both of these, the third feminine plural and the second feminine plural, the Nana sisters. It tells you basically they are feminine plural. One is third feminine plural, the other one is second feminine plural. And so when we get to the second masculine plural, it has the tav with the heroic, just like before, and it has the shuric at the end here to tell you that that is second masculine plural. Okay, so even though it has a shuric here, just like the third masculine plural, the preformative is going to set it apart. The tav is going to tell you that this is not third masculine plural, but it has to be second masculine plural. Okay, and the second feminine plural, you have the tav with the heroic there. You got the na at the end. That's the subformative ending. And then the first common plural, we have the noon with the heroic. And we're somewhat familiar with the noon being first common because we see it as in the performatives also. The pronominal suffixes have a noon first common plural. So the noon is not it's not something new here, but to learn these, when you go here and you see this, that the performatives here and the subformatives will tell you basically what the person, the gender, and the number is on here. Okay, let's go into the notes on here. Once again, we need to memorize this paradigm. It's very important that we do memorize it and get it down early. It's because we're going to see it going throughout all the other stems as we go through the different stems within the Hebrew verb system. As in the perfect, the imperfect paradigm moves from third person to first person, singular then plural. Now in the cow stem only, the imperfect conjugation has a verbal performative. Knowing this fact will make identification of the imperfect forms much easier. So you want to look for those performative particles that are placed onto the root of that verb. In the cow strong verb, all performative consonants have the heroic vowel, except the first common singular, which has a sagol, like in ektol here. All the other ones have either a yod heroic or a tav heroic in there. Now you've probably already noticed that two sets of forms are identical in the imperfect paradigm. In each instance, context must provide the proper identification. Having duplicate forms, however, does make paradigm memorization easier on there. So you have the na-nas in there, and then you have the ones that have the third feminine singular and the second masculine singular identical here. So the third feminine singular and second masculine singular identical, and third feminine plural and second feminine plural are identical right there. And again, the context will tell you what's to be used in there, which makes the best sense. Now in the perfect, the third person plural, like katelu, they killed, is common in gender. In the imperfect, the third person plural is inflected for gender, so there are two third person plural forms, like I mentioned earlier. There's a third masculine plural and a third feminine plural, yiktelu and tiktolna in there. So, there are little differences between the perfect and the imperfect in the breaking down commas versus breaking them down into gender and number. The imperfect prefix tav is a begakapet letter, and an initial begakapet letter will normally have a dagesh lene, as seen in the above paradigms, which that's pretty much understood here. The stem vowel is a holum, like I mentioned earlier, except in those forms that have suffixatives that consist of a vowel, like the second feminine singular, the third masculine plural, and the second masculine plural, wherein the holum stem vowel is reduced to a vocal shava. And we saw that happen also in the perfects also. So that's nothing new here. With some frequency in the Hebrew Bible, like 325 times, the third masculine plural and the second masculine plural forms will be written with a final noon, as in yiktelun. That's what we call the noon paragogal noon here. This final noon is called a noon paragogikam. Verbs with this final noon may also be spelled defectively. Yes, don't worry about it. Don't lose too much sleep over this here. You'll recognize these. It happens, like I said, 325 times in text, but you'll become aware of it here. Verbs with this final noon may also be spelled defectively, meaning that the vowel letter shurk is written as a kibbutz. Here's the kibbutz here, as in yiktelun or tiktelun. The following graphic identifies the prefix and stem vowels that are diagnostic of the cow imperfect. These diagnostics must be memorized. Note that the silent shava under kof is not considered to be diagnostic. So it's the heroic and the holum. These are the diagnostic indicators. Now the yod is the prefix that we have on the particular imperfect strong verbs here. Now the cow imperfect paradigm on other strong verbs, the paradigms below are not to be memorized. You should be able to reproduce them once you memorize the forms of katal listed above. Note that the dagesh lene in the second root consonant of the imperfect forms of zachav, kathav, and chavatz. The presence of the dagesh lene is due to the fact that these begakapet letters are preceded by a consonant and not a vowel. So, we'll see all that happening here. You see how this is a non-vocal schwa. After your prefix, you have your prefix here with this yod and the herrick. You have a non-vocal schwa. A non-vocal schwa, a herrick vowel is a short I class, so it's going to be in a closed, unaccented syllable, as in Yizkor. So what normally was in the perfect, it didn't have a Dagesh now has Dagesh because it is a closed syllable. There's no preceding vocal vowel before the Kaf here. And all the way down, you see that happen here. So that's what it's talking about. Yizkor, Tizkor, Tizkor, Tizkari, Ezkor, Yizkaru, Tizkorna, Tizkoru, Tizkorna, and Nizkor. Okay? That's what we have here. Same thing with Katav, Yiktov, Tiktov, Tiktov, Tiktavi, Ektov, Yiktavu, Tiktovna, Tiktavu, Tiktovna, Niktov. Here, so he will write, she will write, you masculine will write, you feminine will write, I will write, they will write masculine, and they feminine will write Tiktovna, second masculine plural. You all will write Tiktavu. Tiktovna is you all feminine will write, and Niktov is we will write. And you can see that going all the way down. So only in the Begakafat letters do you see that happening in. So you got Yik boats, Tick boats, Tick boats, Tick bev C, Ik boats, Yik besu, Tick boats na, Tick boats besu, Tick boats na, Nick boats. Here, so it show you the Zakar, the Katav, and the Chabatz. Do have the Dagesh Lanes in the second consonant there. Let's go to stated verbs in the imperfect. In chapter 13, you studied the inflection of stated verbs in the cow perfect. You'll recall that the stated verbs are classified by their stem vowel, which is either a patak, or a sere, or a holum. Now, this variation in stem vowel causes differences in the spelling of certain perfect forms. For example, the sere stative has a sere stem vowel in the cow perfect, third masculine singular. Additionally, the holum statum has an O class stem vowel throughout, kotonta. With the imperfect inflection stative verbs, however, the stem vowel is patak regardless of the stem vowel in the perfect. So totally disregard the stem vowel of the stative verbs in the perfect. It doesn't affect. It's totally the same. They all have pataks in the imperfect. So if it was patak in the perfect, it's going to be patak in the imperfect. If it's sere in the perfect, it's going to be patak in the imperfect. If it's holum in the perfect, it's going to be patak in the imperfect. So we have yikdal, yikbad, and yiktan here for the imperfect, cow imperfect. As you can see, they basically all have the patak for the stem vowel right here. Alright, and just gives you a little paradigm of the breakdown of the statum vowels here, the statum verbs. Yikdal, tikdal, tikdal, tikdali, ekdal, yikdalu, tikdalna, tikdalu, tikdalna, nikdal. And nothing really changes except there's just a stem vowel. Is all the difference there. Okay. Now the lexical form for most imperfect verbs is the cow perfect masculine singular. The cow perfect masculine singular is the standard lexical form for most verbs regardless of stem or conjugation. Now, when we're going to parse these verbs, when we're asked to parse the cow imperfect verbs, we'll be required to identify the verbal stem with its cow, with the conjugation, whether it is imperfect or perfect, the person, the gender, and the number, and the verbal root. When parsing, give the required information in the proper order as the following examples illustrate, though given below, translation is not a required part of the parsing information. Like Yishme'u. We would say this is a cow stem, imperfect conjugation, third masculine plural because we have the u here, the shurk here. From Shema, they will hear. Yamlok, we have cow imperfect, third masculine singular from Malak, he will reign or be king. So you got your stem vowel of your holum right there, and that basically is telling you that that's the imperfect. Remember, the diagnostics is the holum of the stem vowel and the heric of the prefix right here. Now, negation of the imperfect. Like the perfect, the imperfect is also negated with the word lo. This negative particle is always placed immediately before the verb. In addition to the use of the negative particle to simply negate the verb, there is a special use of lo before an imperfect. For example, in the Ten Commandments, the combination of lo plus the imperfect is used for an absolute permanent prohibition, meaning you're never to do this. For example, here it goes. Lo ta'aseh, you shall not make. Lo tisah, you will not take. Lo tirsak, you shall not kill. All these basically are telling you that there are prohibitions. You will never do this. You are never to do this. The negative particle all is also used with the imperfect verb to express an immediate, specific, and non-durative prohibition. In other words, prohibitions with lo are permanent and absolute. Prohibitions with all are immediate and specific. The particle all is often prefixed to the verb with a makef. And here you see it, the aleph with the patak with the lamed with the makef. And here's some examples. Al tiktov basefer, do not write in the book. Al tira, do not fear. Al tishmeu el divrei, do not listen to the words of your neve echem, of your prophets. Okay. So basically, that's what it is here. In the summary, the cow stem is used to express simple action with an active voice. The imperfect conjugation is used to express an incomplete action, which may be translated with either English present or future tense. And the perfect conjugation is also called the prefix conjugation because every form takes a verbal prefix, hereafter called a performative. The performances are unique to the imperfect conjugation in the cow and derived stems. And so they're basically the diagnostic indicators you need to memorize in here: the heric and the stem vowel. And you recognize those prefixes, the yods and the taws, the aleph and the nun, to show which person it is. Okay? Alright, well that's all for lesson 15 here. Be sure to go ahead and get into your homework and do your homework. If need be, you can look back and go back into your lesson, into your workbook, and we will meet again to study, go over the homework in chapter 15. Alright, Shalom Aleichem. Bye-bye.